Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Solar Opposites. Okay, so this episode, the birthday present, is interesting. So this episode explains how Schlorpian birthdays work, and they work very differently from human ones in the worst way possible. We'll get to that. But also, we find, in keeping with a lot of the Pupa stories, the Pupa has a side story, this one, that is motivated by toys. And I find that, well, that's always what happens. But in any case, I guess we'll start with the B plot first, with the Pupa, since it's not really connected to anything, and it's kind of just on its own. But in case this episode opens up with the Pupa playing with toys in the cockpit of the ship. And of course, Aisha kind of isn't particularly enthused about the idea of him playing with toys, pointing out that she really wish she wouldn't buy toys on her credit. But it's this point where an alarm goes off in the ship, and it's this point where Aisha explains that's the spring cleaning protocol. As she goes on to explain, Corvo is too lazy to do it himself, so he has the ship run on autopilot to kind of just clean up the ship and get rid of anything that they don't need, any unnecessary clutter and anything else. In case she then goes on to explain that the way it actually works is that they increase the radiation level in the ship, which is designed to kill all organic matter, and explains that they're pretty much safe within the cockpit of the ship. But of course, she also admits that anything else that might have wandered into the ship is obviously not going to be very safe. She's going on to explain that she may have seen a UPS guy wander in there at one point, with the Pupa immediately realizing that he needs to save the UPS guy. And of course, Aisha explains that no, he shouldn't do that because it's just a lowly UPS guy. He could be a horrible person. But the Pupa doesn't care and brings two winches. He proceeds to clip two winches to himself, with Aisha pointing out that it's pointless, and pointing out that once the radiation starts, he's not going to be able to get out. And ultimately admits that she can't let the Pupa go down there because it's just way too dangerous, and tries to close the door. But the Pupa just slides under the door with it using a toolbox and escapes deeper in. And of course, it's at this point where we find out that yes, the radiation levels are slowly rising, and there's this big ominous voice that keeps telling the Pupa, "Hey, radiation levels are rising. You shouldn't be down here." And of course, Aisha keeps trying to tell the Pupa that, yeah, you shouldn't be down here. It's dangerous down here. But of course, the Pupa isn't really listening and keeps going through, and eventually comes a giant maze, which of course Aisha claims that all ships have one, and it's not weird, but it's just too bad unnecessary plot. But in case, the Pupa then proceeds to kind of echolocate somebody who's stuck in the maze, and proceeds to go through and discovers an exterminator. And of course, it's weird that the exterminator is here, and of course, Aisha wonders why there's an exterminator in the ship, and he explains that he was assigned to get rid. He was scheduled by Corvo to get rid of some sort of pest that was stuck on the ship, but it attacked him and bit his leg, and he's been stuck in there for a while. And of course, Aisha wonders what he could possibly be talking about, and he eventually disguises it as a Volptar, which is this massive bug thing that, as we find out, is immune to radiation. And of course, the Pupa proceeds to use one of his two winches to save the exterminator, because even though Aisha points out that he's not the guy that the Pupa's looking for, but of course, the Pupa rescues him anyway. And when Aisha realizes that that he should use the winch to save himself, but the Pupa just keeps going deeper into the ship, and eventually he comes across this deep, bottomless pit that, as we find out, is designed that Aisha just uses it to dispose of batteries because it's bottomless. But of course, the Pupa proceeds to pull out a welding mask and a pair of flares, which of course Aisha proceeds to scold him again not to buy things on her credit card, wondering where he could possibly have gotten those things. And of course, he proceeds to use the flares to propel himself down into the pit, and eventually finds a woman with a very thick German accent. Of course, the pupa proceeds to pull her out and proceeds to explain that she had been wandering around the ship for a while and eventually fell down the pin and got lost, and is having trouble readjusting because she's been falling for a while. Which and of course, Aisha, and of course, the pupa then proceeds to pull out the next set of his his winches, but Aisha won't let him come back. Proceeding to explain that obviously he only has 2 winches. And if he pulls if she, for that reason, she jammed up the winch so that he can't pull it back, and insists that if he's going to reel the winch in, he has to come with. So the pupa proceeds to make a big show of climbing onto the woman's lap, putting on his mask and all those other things. But once she's out of the door and into the cockpit, Aisha then notes that the pupa has pulled a fast one and is actually secretly still hiding on the ship somewhere. But of course, the pupa does ultimately run into the Volptar as well and gets away from it. At which point he comes across the main the main reactor of the ship, I guess, where the radiation is coming out of, and ultimately discovers the UPS guy. His arm got stuck in the generator. He is very close to it. And ultimately his arm is stuck and he can't get it out. So the pupa, in an effort to save him, has to unfortunately break his arm and proceeds to try and pulls him to safety. But at this point, where the Volptar attacks both of them, and the radiation level is nearing 100%, so they're almost gonna die. But the pupa comes up with something really smart. He proceeds to grab the guy, but also he grabs his package, because even though the guy admits he'll get fired, but also doesn't care because they sent him in there anyway, because they're the ones who sent him in there to begin with. But ultimately the pupa proceeds to pull the guy to safety and then thinks of a really clever way of surviving the radiation blast. Of course, Aisha then proceeds to talk with the 2 people that the pupa left after she believes the pupa's dead, and admits that he was the pupa. He's the one who saved them, and also points out that he was very important, and for that reason they need to get their story straight. But it's at this point where the pupa appears inside the Volptar and kills it from the inside. It's ultimately he survived the radiation blast by hiding inside, and so did the UPS guy. But of course, once everybody decides they've had enough sci-fi bullshit for one day, and the 3 humans leave, while the UPS guy thanks the pupa, pointing out that every day of his life he's been told what they can do for Brown, but never what Brown can do for them, but never once what someone did for Brown. And of course, he proceeds to hand the pupa the package and leaves. And of course, Aisha then proceeds to have this big sentimental thing with the pupa, where she then proceeds to point out that through the pupa's brave heroics, she pointed out that she's now learned that all human lives are precious, even the UPS guy she wrongfully accused of being a bad person. But it's at this point where the pupa reveals that he was actually just after the My Little Pony dolls that shipped, and of course we find Aisha's pissed off about the fact that he once again bought toys on her credit card, and her little hologram chases him around the ship. And that's the B part. So the A part is a bit more substantial and important, but ultimately this episode establishes first and foremost how the Slurping birthdays work, and it's a little bit different. But in case, we find out that it's pot roast night, which they literally do to roast each other, which is fun. But of course, Yumyulack is of course happy because he's got a new hat, which of course is designed to show off his whole thing. With him being a bounty hunter, he was trying to find a good hat to represent that, and he ultimately just settled on a bucket hat. And of course, Corvo proceeds to come out with a big pot roast, and does explain that they're having roast night and are trying to they're just gonna kind of roast each other. Of course, it gets a little too real at the end of the opening segment, but yeah, that's essentially the premise. Ultimately, it starts up with some little lighthearted banter, as you would expect of a roast, but of course Terry and Jesse appreciating being roasted because it's funny, and of course the idea is that they're busting each other's chops, but ultimately it gets way too real when Corvo goes a little overboard with Yumyulack's roast. And Yumyulack is insistent that they don't roast him because he wanted to skip out tonight. But Corvo admits that it's a family thing and he has no choice. It gets way too real with Corvo's roast, and of course everybody's just visibly disturbed that Corvo went that far. But ultimately, they decide to roast him back in a bit more of a lighthearted way, and Corvo just overreacts, flips the table, runs out of the kitchen, claiming that words can hurt, and runs off crying. Naturally, Jessie is upset that she upset Corvo because, she was the one who roasted him. So the next day, she proceeds to apologize to him and asks if they're cool. And of course, he proceeds to just kind of play it off as, oh no, I wasn't actually offended by your roast. And he tries to play it off as this whole thing where it's like, he thought it was just such a knee slapper that he missed his knee and hit the table. But no, he was very visibly upset. But in case it is at this point where Terry comes down from upstairs and reveals that he found a present on Yumyulack's bed, and claims that it's Yumyulack's birthday. And of course, both of them freak out, while Jessie is a little confused, pointing out that they already have something similar on Earth, even though both of the adult Schlorpians insist that it's two completely different things. But also she's confused as to what the big deal is, and they proceed to explain that actually the way Schlorpian birthdays work is that nobody knows when theirs is, and they only get one in their entire lifetime. As they go on to explain, they can actually get one of two things for their birthday: infinite wisdom or infinite power. And of course, Jessie points out that infinite wisdom sounds cool, but Corvo proceeds to explain that's actually none of that. Actually, nobody's ever picked it, so he would have no idea. And then proceeds to explain that the main purpose that people use for their birthday is to juice themselves up with the unlimited power, and then just take it out on all of the people who have wronged them in their entire lives for the entire day. Which of course, Terry remembers one time when they were on Schlorp where this exact thing happened. There was this guy named Jason who he admits people genuinely liked, but made fun of him a little bit too much. Who just on his birthday juiced up with his birthday present and just took out everybody who had ever wronged him. And bear in mind, this was a person people liked. Obviously, Jessie points out the obvious thing where she points out that that they've been busting Yumyulack's chops a lot lately, and admits that if he finds his birthday present, he may very well juice up with it and just take everybody out. And of course, realizing they can't really let that happen, then realize they need to figure out where Yumyulack is and just do everything in their power to keep him from getting to his birthday present. And of course, they then proceed to do exactly that. They find him at Taekwondo. They proceed to find him at Taekwondo, where he is in the middle. He admits he's got his 4th white belt and white belt stripe, which of course is obviously, obviously demonstrates the fact that yes, he's very much a white belt. And of course, Corvo tries very hard not to roast Yumyulack. Initially insulting him before pointing out that that's actually he then proceeds to correct himself, going, that's actually a really cool idea. We should go out to celebrate your 4th white belt thing. Even though Yumyulack insists that he wants to go home and play the new Madden game, but of course Corvo points out that he could do that anytime, pointing out that they've only got one chance to actually celebrate it's such a monumental achievement, even though it's not really one. The episode kind of lampshades that, but in any case, they point out that they will actually go and celebrate. They'll actually go and celebrate Yumyulack's birthday. But they go on to celebrate Yumyulack's birthday by stalling out the timer so he doesn't actually get his present. And that's essentially what happens. They pretend to go out on a dinner to celebrate his 4th white belt. This pot roast restaurant where it takes a long time because of how it works. They sit at the pot roast and they cook, and it just slowly cooks. No, they sit at this slow brew station where it slowly cooks. They check the temperature, and then eventually they're able to eat after a couple of hours. And they're just kind of slowly running out the clock. But and we also find out that Angus T. Jones from 2.5 Men works here for some reason. And he admits that he's just researching a role and isn't actually working there. But of course, there's this point where before they can actually successfully stall for time with Yumyulack, a girl from their school shows up, and he tries to play it out. He tries to kind of point out that he's embarrassed. Jessie, of course, recognizes her and tries to call her over, but Yumyulack insisted that they don't do that, pointing out that he accidentally sent her a mound pic, whatever that means, and claims that she left it on red and she has been too afraid to speak to her since. But of course they proceed to ask him to see it, and pointing out that it couldn't possibly be that bad. They of course it is that bad, but they proceed to play it off as being completely fine. Especially Corvo, who's like, normally I would roast you, but that's actually a really good pick. So but in case when it becomes clear that the girl from his class is getting too close, he bolts out of the restaurant, and the rest of the Schleppings have to chase after him. So in case realizing that the pot roast was obviously a really bad idea, realizing that the roast was a really bad idea, they proceed to bring him bring him from the Slowbro restaurant to a bounty hunting free-for-all thing that some guy is running. And of course they proceed to. He of course admits that they can't meet with them on one-on-one. They meet him through a video call where he claims that he has a lot of these that he needs to record for each individual person, but ultimately points out that they've got 25 people entering the arena, and only one person is allowed out, and it's essentially a fight to the death. Which of course, Yumyulack, being the bodyguard of the mission and wearing a bounty hunter suit literally at all times, is obviously very visibly excited to murder 24 other people. So he proceeds to go in and tells his family to wish him luck, and of course they proceed to leave the building, claiming that should stall him for enough time while Jesse just comments on how cool the guy is, even though he's running some sort of Squid Game murder bounty hunting burger free-for-all thing. But of course we find out that it took Yumyulack literally 5 seconds to complete the course, because he's just that good at it. So and he's asking them what else they can do for the day. They proceed to realize that they still don't have enough time to stall out. So they proceed to bring Yumyulack to the factory of his favorite hat brand, which as we find out is run by a Willy Wonka-esque character, and his entire factory is kind of loosely based on Willy Wonka and his chocolate factory. They even have an opening song. They even have an original song that admittedly isn't even that good or catchy, as come in World of Pure Imagination. It's spoofing a World of Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka, but it is just not as good as that song. And of course, Corvo does admit that the song is just terrible. He's listening to it and it's trash. So he proceeds to follow this Willy Wonka-esque character up the ladder to learn some trade secrets. When Corvo proceeds to point out that he's very happy that the birthday is almost over, and that can't wait to roast him tomorrow for all of the things that have happened, for all of the weird and lame things that Yumyulack is into. But of course, Jesse and Terry proceed to point out that maybe they should hold off on the roasting, pointing out that they wanted to just kind of. They're hoping that they could just reduce it till after his birthday. At which point Yumyulack overhears them, and realizing it's his birthday and realizing what they're trying to do, realizes that they've been trying to stall the timer. And of course, they proceed to point out that they were just trying to look out for him, pointing out that they were curious, that they didn't know if he was going to use his infinite power or anything else to smite all of his enemies. And of course, Yumyulack admitted that initially he wasn't going to do that. He was maybe going to do it to do some smaller things that he's always wanted to do. Not necessarily like become all powerful and smite all his enemies, but admits that now that they've betrayed him and have lied to him about it being his birthday, he claims that he is going to do that. Starting with Terry and Jesse, who he pushes into the hat making machine, which again is very similar to the Willy Wonka machines, and they proceed to be made into hats, much to Corvo's terror, and when he realizes most of his family has been killed and turned into hats. And of course, Yumyulack proceeds to flee back home, So Corvo proceeds to put on the Terry and Jesse hats and follows after him. And the scene is actually ripped verbatim from a previous episode. Of course, like they literally, like the joke is that they literally reused the animation for the entire scene with Yumyulack claiming that it's from a previous episode where, you know, Jesse's chased Yumyulack home that one time, and of course Yumyulack claims that no, it's completely different. But no, it ends the exact same way, where you know, he gets torn up by a dog, and it's a fun callback. But of course Corvo points out that it is the same thing, and that's it. There's even the same dog that cheers Yumyulack up. But Yumyulack once again insists that it's completely different, and again tells Corvo that she shouldn't use it to stop him. But of course Corvo proceeds to take full advantage of it and runs back home to find the birthday present. At which point Yumyulack follows shortly behind him, having somewhat survived. They kind of just gloss over it because, you know, Yumyulack got fatally wounded the last time that exact scene played out. But here he's just completely fine. Nothing happened. So anyways, Yumyulack proceeds to run in, and of course Corvo is trying to stop him from getting his birthday present, while Yumyulack insists that he gives it back. And Yumyulack proceeds to ask him why he shouldn't use the birthday present to juice up and take him out right then and there. But of course Corvo proceeds to point out that actually he does apologize for all the roasting that he's done, and openly admits that he shouldn't have roasted him as hard as he did before juicing him up, before giving Yumyulack his birthday present, claiming that Corvo quite literally has thin skin, and admits that which means that, you know, not only does it peel off easier, which is just a gross visual that I didn't need to see, but also he proceeds to explain that literally he can't take an insult, which means that if anyone sort of insults him, that he'll be feel a lot worse than everybody else. And of course he proceeds to explain that that's why he roasts Yumyulack so much, because he can dish it out, but he can't take it, and ultimately admits that Yumyulack is of course appreciative of the fact that Corvo opened up to him about it, and of course Corvo admits that yeah, he is sensitive about it, but he did just feel like Yumyulack deserved the right to know. And Yumyulack, thinking about it, then decides to blow off his birthday, and then proceeds to tell Corvo if he would like to watch something, but proceeds to say something that he hates, which of course Corvo immediately picks up on, noting that Yumyulack would never ask him to do thing. So he proceeds to open up the present and discover that it's actually Corvo's birthday, not Yumyulack's. And of course, this causes Corvo to become very visibly upset when he realizes that it was a whole subterfuge thing where they were pretending to throw off Yumyulack's birthday when in actuality they were throwing off Corvo's. And of course, he then realizes that the hats that Jesse and Terry got made into aren't actually them, and they've ultimately been discovered. So of course now, very obviously upset, he then proceeds to use the birthday present to give himself unlimited power. Which of course, Yumyulack tries to talk Corvo down, pointing out that the whole message that they just shared not 2 minutes ago. But of course, Corvo claims that it's a completely different situation and doesn't actually apply. So he proceeds to juice up at the birthday present, and they proceed to go into a bomb shelter in the basement to try and wait out the rest of the timer. With of course Jesse and Terry meeting up with Yumyulack in the house after having hidden in a van pretty much the entire day. So they proceed to wonder why to demand to know why Yumyulack thought it would be a good idea to lead Corvo back to the house. And Yumyulack just admits he went rogue. Like, he has no excuse, he just went rogue. But ultimately they managed to hide in the bomb shelter, which comically has a lot of various doors, including a tiny little safety latch. You know the one, that little thing that just slides over the door and locks it closed. That thing. But of course they all proceed to cower in the basement while Corvo uses his birthday present powers to burst down every single door, and that winds up stalling out the timer enough that he doesn't actually have any sort of power to deal with. So he runs out of time and just flops down on the floor. But in case, Corvo then proceeds to admit that he's very sorry for not listening to the lesson he just gave. So and of course they then proceed to kind of do a mutual trust thing where they admit that the next time the next time a birthday present shows up in the house, that they will, under no circumstances, assume the worst and try to hide the birthday present because and just have more faith in each other. That, of course, does not play out because it winds up being Jesse's birthday present not 2 months later, and they do the exact same thing. They have Jessie play this VR game to keep her from knowing about the birthday present that arrived on her bed and try to dispose of it, but Jessie, of course, immediately discovers it and chases them around the house trying to get the birthday present. And that's how the episode ends. So yeah, this kind of episode does have a bit of a... Obviously, the episode doesn't really have a lesson per se, because it does set up a lesson only for Corvo to be like, no, fuck you, I'm not going to learn the lesson. And that's literally the episode. Like, just assume... Like, I guess the idea is that you just not assume the worst about what's going to happen. And the entire moral is, have more faith in the people that you know. Just don't assume that they're just going to immediately do the worst thing possible. Like, just have more faith in people. I guess that's the lesson, but the episode doesn't kind of ways that actually nobody learned the lesson. So it's kind of funny, but also, yeah. But, in case, yeah, that's pretty much the premise of the episode. I don't really have anything else to add. It's just, oh yeah, birthday present thing that gives unlimited power, and nobody has any faith that they'll be using it responsibly. That is, of course, just what the episode is, and it's pretty interesting and funny because it's like there's a lot of stalling for time in that one, but it's fun and I do enjoy it. But yeah, that was the A plot and the B plot. It's just the idea of having faith in the people in your life that they won't do something bad because they're presented the opportunity. So yeah, and obviously the episode just kind of glosses over the lesson, being like, oh yeah, Corvo doesn't need to learn. Corvo's like, I think this is a completely different situation. I don't need to learn the lesson. But yeah, that's what the lesson is. And they kind of love shit that, yeah, Corvo, that they didn't really learn the lesson in the end because they did the exact same thing with Jessie and instead of Yumyulack. So yeah, that's pretty much the premise. But in case, that is going to do it for today. If you guys enjoyed this review, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me. I would appreciate that. Please check that out. Link is down in the description. It helps support me. I would appreciate that. Go do that. You don't have to. I would appreciate it if you did, though. And also be sure to go and check out my Twitch. We stream Saturdays and Sundays over there, as well as over here, but I do recommend going to follow me over there so I can get closer to Twitch affiliate. Please go do that. And also be sure to go and check out my Discord, my Discord server. Link is down in the description as well. I'm working on a Minecraft server to go along with that, hopefully. That is something I'm trying to do, but it's taking a little bit longer than I thought because I have to baby-proof some of the defensive mobs. So that's taking a bit longer than I thought. But yeah. And also be sure, finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.